if we're gonna keep ranting, well, I'm gonna rant. And Guy, you can go ahead and jump in and defend it if you like, though it won't be pretty. But
go ahead.
Let's talk about the VGAs.
So for people who are listening to the show, we're recording on the Sunday after the VGAs, which took place Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
I attended in person. Jeff watched it on television on Spike TV, and Robert was blissfully unaware in the second perimeter of Zombie Ground Zero.
While you guys were watching that, I was watching a movie with my wife about the son of a British coal miner who became a famous ballet dancer. So,
wow,
Billy Elliot.
Uh-huh.
So
wow.
There we go.
Yeah,
Were you getting ready? Were you getting ready for Black Swan?
I guess so. I don't know. Maybe we're gonna go on a spree of ballet movies. We'll see.
I just actually heard Aronofsky. I read an interview with him where he was sort of like openly asking himself, "Did I make a ballet movie?" It was really interesting because he didn't really think of it that way. But anyway, So
the VGAs, I'm aware of the existence of the show. I would say the reason I wasn't even paying attention or looking out to see if it was going to come on is because I had actually seen the show in the past.
Yeah.
And it was like not a pleasant experience for me. So
right. Yeah. Last year I live blogged it, and but I'm trying to remember. I might have done it on behalf of EA, or maybe I didn't. I don't remember. This year I just felt like being a silent observer until I barked on Twitter at one point about what an embarrassment it was.
Did you sound like DMX when you barked?
Yeah, I did. I think there's two things here. There's two separate things. One is just the nominees and the winners, which, I think overall you look at them and it's not unreasonable. I'd say Red Dead Redemption, which won their Game of the Year, is a pretty good call. Certainly in my top 2 or 3. So the awards themselves are one thing, but it's the show itself that to me is just an abomination. And I don't know if that's ever going to change. I mean, first of all, the main thing is it's on Spike TV, and you look at Spike TV's programming, and I don't think that. I mean, I know I'm not the demographic for that channel, other than being a guy, but But I'm not the type of guy that wants to sit around and watch Mansers or whatever these other shows are.
Dude, I love Mansers. Mansers is amazing. That show blows my mind. But I always thought it was tongue in cheek.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to preface this the defense. I guess I will take the pro. I'll preface this by saying that I'm friends with Jeff Keighley, who is one of the exec producers of the show.
Right.
So I'm very biased. Take it all with a grain of salt. But and I don't also say that I don't watch Spike in general.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't have cable. So I guess that would make it hard to watch Spike. I watch GTTV, which is Jeff's show on weekly show on video games. But I watch it on the website,
mm-hmm.
and I watch Bonus Round. But Jeff's obviously been covering games for years. I guess I'm also biased because he's Canadian like me. But for television coverage of games, GTTV itself is certainly a pretty credible show, as is Bonus Round.
Yes. And I've known Jeff Keighley for years, and he's a good guy. In the past, he's done some really great work in video game writing, and I don't want to, have it be a personal thing on him. Obviously the whole show and the production is kind of, there's a lot more people responsible than just Keighley. I just find it, I just wish it would be a little classier, I wish, I feel like there's not a whole lot of, I feel like it demeans our industry in some ways, and that it panders to kind of the same sort of lowest common denominator that the channel itself does. And maybe that's why I want to sort of focus on Spike TV. I feel like maybe if it was on another network or cable station, it would have it would feel less pandering and less dude bro. And I feel like they're blowing the opportunity to celebrate the industry in a way that won't be offensive to like 85% of the population. You know, if you're like 18 to 35 male, and you play Halo a lot, then maybe this was like awesome or something. But to everybody else, you know, the grand majority of people who play games, which extends far beyond that demographic, which includes people who play The Sims and whatever, this show would just be a big like WTF. You know, including just the boob shots of Olivia Munn. All this stuff was just like, you know, come on already. Like, how old are we? And I just feel like guys.
So wait, what sort of specific things happened? Because I mean, I literally have no idea what went on. So for someone who wasn't watching, like, what? I mean, was it just like an hour and a half of someone spraying a super soaker on Olivia Munn's chest, or what?
No, see, then I wouldn't be complaining. No, I mean, hey. No, it was. I mean, but it was. No, it was not that extreme. But it was just. I mean, first of all, you had the sort of like C and D list celebrities. No offense to any C and D list celebrities. You know, reciting this like really bad, you know, teleprompted, scripted, quote unquote jokes. You know, clearly about stuff that they either had no interest in, that their agent made them go do this thing. And then there was a lot of, I felt like there was a lot of random sort of TNA and just, and then another thing is that the actual amount of time spent on awards seems to be decreasing year after year, and instead the show gets filled up with trailers that the game companies are obviously paying to have shown at the VGAs because they know they're getting a TV audience. So in a way, the whole thing becomes a big excuse or it's essentially a big TV commercial for the gaming companies to announce things like the new Elder Scrolls, which was announced last night. Now that stuff to me was cool, and like everybody else, I was excited to see that announcement. So that's neat. But to do it in the context of an award show, and pretend like this award show actually, you know, means something, and is important to the industry, I found kind of disingenuous and sort of insulting.
Well, to go back to something you said, I don't know that the publishers pay to have their awards. I mean, to have their trailers featured in the show.
Either. I'm speculating.
Yeah, my understanding is that there's it's more curated than, you know, that basically and again, I don't want to speak for Jeff, but I believe that, you know, he, starting in the spring or summer, he's, you know, on the road constantly meeting with publishers. They're showing him early cuts of trailers and things like that, and they're determining which ones they want to have actually show up in the broadcast. And, you know, they're definitely, not everything gets in because there's definitely more interest in having stuff show up there than there are slots. So maybe on a future episode, Jeff, we'll have you on and you can sort of do a little rundown of how it works. I mean, I think.
How did you feel there? I mean, you were there, and how did you feel about like the, you know, that kind of, you know, the banter and all that stuff, and Olivia Munn's performance and all that? I mean, you know, you
have to remember that when you're in the crowd. So the way it was set up was there were two groups of audience on one side of the stage, and then on the other side of the stage were a set of tables where I think it was mostly nominees and winners, and then there was so they were on the floor, and then there was another group on the other side of the floor. That's where I was, and then there was some sort of then there was some elevated seating where the rest of the audience was. Seated on the ground, you know, I didn't have the same view that the audience at home had, so you probably could look right down Olivia's shirt. I myself wasn't able to do that. She was elevated on the stage, standing above me, so I did not get that shot.
Bummer, dude.
But that said, I think your criticisms of sort of the TNA factor and those kinds of things are extremely valid, and they're on point. I think the challenge is that when you look at even the Academy Awards have really changed a lot over the years, in that, so I think this year they went with it's gonna be James Franco.
Yep.
And Anne Hathaway hosting.
Right.
Last year it was Hugh Jackman. So they're trying to turn it really into this sort of very song and dance. And I think one could argue that Neil Patrick Harris is sort of almost the Hugh Jackman of television.
Well, sure, and he's great.
I thought he did a really good job.
Right. I think he's like, probably functionally incapable of doing a bad job at anything he does. So so it was a score to get somebody as talented and charismatic as him.
Absolutely. And, did a phenomenal job, clearly working very hard. I mean, being there in the audience, you could see him sort of in the in-between stuff, sort of running to his next position and, getting everything set, and was pretty flawless. I mean, some people struggled reading the teleprompter. They'll remain nameless.
But also, I felt like you could tell that he didn't seem all that thrilled with what he had to say either. And he even made a joke near the end. He said something like, he made a joke about this being the end of his hosting career, and that was not. I'm sure that wasn't on the teleprompter. I'm sure that was. So
yeah, I mean, I think to me the high point of the stuff creatively was the In Memoriam tribute. I thought that was pretty. That kind of got at something, and I feel like.
And they had that had the night's best joke at the expense of my former employer. Which was In Memoriam also included NBA Elite 11, so that was pretty funny.
Right, so for the people who weren't watching, including Robert, what they did was they showed the deaths of a number of characters, ranging from John Marston's wife to one of the ghosts in Pac-Man, and it was just a riff. I mean, it's not the first time anything like that's been done, but I mean, it was wittily put together and just riffing on the idea of how death is a constant in video games, and I feel like that was one of those things that was probably one of the cleverer bits in the show.
Yeah, right.
And I feel like that kind of points a direction in which they can go.
I agree.
With their humor.
Yeah.
That maybe find a way to sort of like hit that balance of something that is going to have mass appeal while also being really true to what games are. Truer to what games are than some of the elements that they have.
And the gaming industry itself, not just games.
I just find it impossible to imagine a television video game award ceremony that I would actually be willing to watch. And this is coming from someone who just doesn't watch the Oscars, doesn't watch any of that stuff, because I just get worn out on the bad speech writing and the reading from the teleprompter and I could watch the MTV Video Music Awards mainly for the performances or something, but if you're not going to have some sort of performance, I don't know, I just get.
Well, speaking of the performances, I can't vouch for My Chemical Romance because I'm just not that familiar with them as a band, but Jose Gonzalez, who was a guitarist who performed in the Red Dead Redemption soundtrack, he sounded really great to me there, and at the after party, a lot of industry people were commenting on how good he was. I don't know how that played back home, Jeff.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I mean, yeah, that was fine. I mean, I think there were elements of the show that were fun. The In Memoriam was an entertaining bit, like you said. I mean, and also, probably 99% of all award shows are pretty terrible just by the nature of them. And, some of the shows like the Emmys, I just flat out stopped watching because the awards themselves there are so ridiculous and wrong.
Well, it speaks to one of the overall challenges with games in general in terms of resonating in the larger culture is the absence of celebrity, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at TV and you look at movies and you look at music, these are at least at the stuff that ends up getting celebrated at award shows, the best or certainly the most popular stuff in the year, that stuff is trading on people who are pretty famous, who have been on magazine covers and on TV shows and TMZ and are very recognizable, and that's the thing that games don't have, and that's it's something we've talked about on the cast before about how the cultural profile of games is a lot lower than sort of say their social profile or impact because of the absence of celebrity. And
Well,
I think
right.
that's one of the things that they have to try and overcorrect because they're competing for an audience on television
Yeah.
to watch their show.
Well, it's a unique problem because with the Emmys, with the Grammys, with the movies, you actually are dealing with real human beings, and
Yes.
in our case, these are just products. This would sort of be like trying to have an award show on a cable TV for, well, I was going to say books, but not even then because some authors are quite famous.
I mean, look at if you guys. Maybe if Jewel were an actual Jewel, you guys could have her as the face of your game, and you could get on Spike and get up there and accept an award.
Well, it would probably be more like Bjorn the Unicorn from Peggle, or one of the zombies maybe. But I think that given that there were some pieces of the show that weren't painful to me, I guess what I would like to challenge Jeff, who, like I said, is fundamentally a good guy and a real smart guy, to sort of use whatever clout he has with Spike to try to try to make it just a bit more respectful and a bit more classy, to try to dumb down some of the stuff that, is going to turn off women and other people who are actually part of the industry. The gaming industry, here's what bothered me the most about the show is that just a couple weeks ago, we were dealing with the whole Supreme Court issue, right? And we're trying to rally the community, the world in general. We're trying to say, listen, we're a valid art form. We deserve the same sort of respect and the same rights under the Constitution that everybody else has. And so we make strides that way. And then we turn around and we look like frickin', drunk frat boys on this show again. It's like, one step forward and 10 steps back. And it's like, how can you expect people to take us seriously when you have an award show on this wrestling network with, this kind of lowbrow TNA garbage going on? I just feel like we can do better than that.
I'm sure that's true. I also think that anyone who's not a video gamer or the kind of person who watches Spike TV doesn't even know this show exists.
Well, that's
so
true.
That's fine.
And actually, I think that
it just doesn't exist.
Right, and that's a saving grace, right? The saving grace is that the saving grace here is that nobody watches that fucking terrible channel anyway. And so hopefully nobody saw it except those of us who knew about it. But, I don't think that's an excuse for not trying to aim higher, for one thing. And another thing, as we all know, there are other award ceremonies in the gaming industry, like at GDC, the Game Developers Conference, that are much more industry inclined and representative of gaming, and of the work done. Where this is some sort of like attempt at mainstreaming it that maybe it just can't. Maybe it's never going to work. Maybe there can't be a show on TV that doesn't do this kind of thing about gaming because of the reasons you said, Guy.
Well, I was just thinking of the larger, sort of broadening it beyond the point you were making. You were saying that it's advantageous to the public face of games that, that it's on Spike, it will be in relative obscurity compared to the mass audience, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's part of me that's always wondered if games, as a genre, as a medium, and certainly mainstream games, benefit from existing and operating in relative cultural obscurity because the amount of violence, the TNA and these other things, could you get away with it if a spotlight was being shone on it all the time?
I don't know. I mean, look at last year's Best Picture was No Country for Old Men. I mean, the violence level in movies, and in whatever. I mean, this is across the board in entertainment. I mean, there's CeeLo with "Fuck You" is possible Grammy Song of the Year, which of course I'd vote for. So, yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
I think for me, I feel like the awards have. I went last year, I think the year before I watched, and I felt like I feel like they get better a bit better with every passing year. One thing I was curious to know, at least on a technical level, Jeff, since you watch it at home, is how did the augmented reality stuff play out?
Well, it looked neat. That was cool too. I like that as well. Just from a
What are you guys talking about?
Well, can you describe it, Ngai?
I think you should describe it, just because we only saw it during the commercial breaks. They would replay some of it, the augmented reality stuff, but we really couldn't see it because it was being integrated sort of virtually. It was happening with the broadcast, and we couldn't really see it on stage.
It was, yeah, I don't know I don't know the best way to describe it.
I think they took video games. So for the one that I remember seeing was the Kratos one that they did, whereas they did some stuff where it made it look like video game stuff was being brought to life within the venue. I think is the best way to describe it.
Right. And you sort of seen that stuff a little bit. They've done a little bit of that on the Oscars and stuff, I think, in the past, right, where they've had like I'm trying to remember, was it like Jessica Rabbit on the stage with them or something like that? So I feel like these kind of things that it's like this and the in memoriam you're talking about, like that's what there's some creativity going on in the presentation of the show that I agree with. It's sort of the tone and the manner of the show is what I found offensive. It's like there's good ideas going on here. There's clearly creative people who are doing their jobs well at things like augmented reality to have cool things happen, but yet the attitude of the show, I feel, towards gamers and towards the audience is pandering. So I'd rather just see, let's stop just doing the, like, we're all just like fat basement dwelling, retards who play video games, and say that this is like part of mainstream culture now, and we don't have to keep sort of making those kind of jokes and apologizing for it, and being sort of like with everything we say and do. That's where I feel like the show was a letdown.
I don't want to drag this out any further, but
yeah,
I mean, maybe we are fat basement dwelling, idiots. I really, I just sometimes I think back to like gaming events where the press and gamers were, and I think like maybe that is the people, like you go to like a gaming event and all they serve is like nachos and cookies, and they're like scantily clad women, and they want to like take the games press out to shoot some guns and get drunk, and that's sort of the culture. I mean, sadly, it's not the culture for everyone, but that is kind of the gaming culture. I think there are some people who don't participate in that particular version of the gaming culture, and that's part of living in the modern world, is that we might say that there is this gamer culture, but in reality there are a lot of sort of sects of people who play games, and we get together and we laugh at the people who sit around eating a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken and playing the new WoW for 12 hours. Or wait, isn't that what you've been doing, Jeff?
Yeah, that is what I've been doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that, judging from your Twitter feed, I think that sums it up.
I was playing WoW Cataclysm last night with a box of holiday JoJo's, Trader Joe's Oreos. So yes, I am that guy.
Oh, yeah.